Coming up on today's Locked On 49ers, stat projections are out according to ESPN, starting with the defensive side of the ball. How many sacks for Nick Bosa and the gang? Defensive Player of the Year follow-up, all that and more. Coming up on today's Locked On 49ers.
You are Locked On 49ers, your daily San Francisco 49ers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On 49ers. Brian Peacock and Eric Crocker at BD Peacock at Eric_Crocker. Thank you, everybody, for making us your first listen on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Big ups to all the everydayers out there. We appreciate you. If you want to be an everydayer, just subscribe on YouTube and everywhere you get your podcasts. And today, Croc, we're talking defense. We're talking stat projections. Mike Clay of ESPN dropped stat projections for darn near every player in the league, especially the starters. So this is going to be fun to dive into today. And I think we'll have some idea of overs and unders and what we like here versus what Mike Clay projects. And some of this from a fantasy perspective, but obviously he's projecting what those stats are going to be nevertheless for the real world NFL. So
real quick, I didn't notice his win-loss projections as well.
Yeah, it's interesting. He projects the 49ers have the 12th most difficult. So the upper half of easy schedules in the the 12th most difficult, right? Schedule in the NFL. Projected wins being 10.5, which is exactly where Vegas has the 49ers with the over-under, right? 10.5. So really interesting there. And according to the rest of the league, those projected 10.5 wins would be 8th best in the NFL, looking at the schedule. And it's even broken down per game. Like, for example, week 4, Arizona at home, 87% chance for the 49ers to win that game.
Week 1, do you find that interesting? I know we're going to get into players, but I just noticed this. So now I'm super intrigued. I see the unit grades, quarterback 1.1. That seems like it's pretty low. So just interesting that he has all this. But week 1, 49ers have a 52% win probability scored by him. Do you agree or disagree?
It's a coin flip game on the road. Not sure who your quarterback is.
We know who it is, man. Brock Purdy.
It's never an easy game. Oh, you think Purdy's 100% going to play in week 1? I don't think it's that cut and dry yet.
You don't think so?
No. I think I would bet on him being the quarterback. But then again, he hasn't played. He had no offseason. Is he going to be rusty at all? So is that a good thing if he's, could you argue that the 49ers have a better opportunity with Sam Darnold or Trey Lance starting week 1 versus a guy who hasn't hardly had any practice all offseason?
Kind of like how, and completely different for the most part, right? But I want to say coming off the divisional round game, Trent Williams had a hurt ankle, said he probably shouldn't have played in that last game, and he did a couple years ago. And he was like, probably would have been better off if McKivitz would have played. And you're saying, just everything's pointing in the right direction, but hey, there's a chance. There's a slight chance, right? You said if you had to put money on it, Brock Purdy would be the starter, but you could see a scenario where maybe he's not quite 100%. So is 90% of Brock Purdy better than 100% of Trey Lance or Sam Darnold?
Speaking of McKivitz, new starter at right tackle. You got TJ Watt that comes a lot off the left side of that Pittsburgh Steelers defense. The last time Brock Purdy was on a field, he was hit by a stud pass rusher coming off of that side. He's going to be taking extra peeks over there in his first game since that happened. So I think that week 1 is a sneaky difficult game for the 49ers, especially how the team has started slow. Remember Jimmy Garoppolo, how bad he looked? He looked really rusty last year in his first action against the what was that? The Denver Broncos game? He was bad in that game. And then he was really good later in the year, but he was bad in that first game. So it's not going to be, look, and these are all the NFL's chaos in the first place. So this could go a lot of directions for the 49ers this year. And I know they're a really good team. And if you look at this, I think there's only 3 games on the schedule that have a less than 50% chance of the 49ers winning that game. So I think this Pittsburgh game is the 4th lowest percentage for the 49ers at 52% win probability, 4th or 5th.
You talked about the 49ers and kind of, TJ Watt and some troubles that he could kind of provide for the 49ers. But looking at these unit grades, He has the 49ers offensive line as the worst unit on the team. They're not even at 1. So, again, I don't know what the highest grade that you can give a guy is, but the 49ers running back's 4.0. So I'm assuming maybe a 5.
I think maybe just 4 is the top. I think
Okay.
it's 0 through 4, it's looking like.
Okay, so they have the linebacker unit at a 4, interior defensive line, which Eric Armstead and Javon Hargraves, 3.9, so that's pretty high. Tight end, 3.8, that's really high. Running backs, 4.0, but quarterback, 1.1, offensive line, 0.9.
Yeah, very interesting there.
Another interesting one.
And corners are low. Yeah.
1.1.
We talked about this, right, with the PFF projections, and I was surprised that they had the 49ers secondary as a top 10 unit, because I think outside looking in, if you're a national, if you cover the NFL on a national basis, I think from the outside, you look at the 49ers offensive line, aside from Trent Williams, and you look at the 49ers defensive backfield, you probably don't think they're as good as the 49ers, and probably 49ers fans think those two units are for the 49ers. Especially the 49ers. Like, the 49ers did nothing at tackle. They are all in on McKinnon. They're like, we're good. We are 100% good here. They've had 2 off seasons to try to figure this out, knowing that McGlinchey was going to be a free agent and then he would probably go. This is their plan at offensive tackle. And so that's super interesting to me. Like, the 49ers believe this is a really good unit, and this is the unit they've put together with years of foresight. Because with when Laken Tomlinson was going to be a free agent, they drafted a 2nd-round player. When McGlinchey was going to be a free agent, they did nothing.
Is there any unit there that surprises you with their grades? I would say for me, probably edge. And maybe that's right about where they are. But 2.0, that's kind of playing it safe. That's also factoring in Nick Bosa is on that defensive line and how great he is. And then outside of that, Nick Bosa at that position, they feel like it's fairly average, I would say. Or does Nick Bosa give them the average? So he really, I mean, if you take Nick Bosa away, it's like far below average.
Right. That's basically what they're saying. It's somewhat similar. They probably like the rotational group a little bit better on the edge, apparently, than the offensive line. But basically what they're saying is you take that one great player away and they're really bad. And that's what they're saying about the 49ers edge group, and that's what they're saying about the 49ers offensive line. And it's kind of hard to argue with that.
I think they're saying more about, I mean, a 0.9 on the offensive line with Trent Williams.
Trent Williams, yeah. So
they're saying your offensive line is not good. And that's contradicting what we just read from PFF, which had them higher than.
So there's a couple of things that are different about the PFF grade and about this projection from Mike Clay of ESPN. The ESPN projections that we're looking at today, they are factoring in injuries. And Nick Bosa's sack projection here is 13.1. And remember last offseason, we said smash the over on 12 sacks for Nick Bosa. And I hope everybody out there that was listening made that bet. And that was a super easy bet if he played the whole season. But Nick Bosa has missed time in the NFL. And Trent Williams has missed a lot of games in the NFL. And so when you look at some of these projections, and we'll get to the offensive side, and I think some people might be disappointed about some of the offensive projections as well. They're factoring in injuries. And so if you're putting it through a model, a player like Nick Bosa, his number is going to come out lower than what it would be if he's playing a full season.
If they could guarantee, like, oh, no, Nick Bosa is going to play every single game, then it's like, all right, well, let's bump this D-line grade up.
Yeah, and that's mostly because he's missed a few games aside from it, but he had the torn ACL and missed the whole season too. So that's, that's always going to be part of it with some of these projections. And so I think that's part of it here as well. But I mean, that's easily an over, right? A healthy Nick Bosa for a full season's over 13.1 sacks. Now, sacks can really fluctuate year to year. So, he's not going to have 18 and a half, 20 sacks every single season, but 13 is a number he should be able to attain in a healthy season in most years, I think.
Right. And we talk about TJ Watt, how great of a pass rusher he is. He's had some very explosive years where he had like 22 sacks, but also a lot of 15 plus sack years. So, and I think that's where we believe that Nick Bosa is one of the best pass rushers, even though Lane Johnson, someone asked him about like best pass rushers, and he mentioned a bunch of guys, did not mention Nick Bosa.
I want Bosa lines up more on the opposite side, so maybe he just hasn't faced him enough.
I think also sometimes when you ask a guy a question on the fly, like, "Hey man, who's some of the," and then you can see his wheels spinning, like, "Well, you know that Mike
Yeah,
Parsons is really good," and
the guys
obviously he
he
plays him
faces
twice a
twice
year.
a year in the division and things like that.
Oh man, you know who was one guy that was really good? That was one of the hardest guys to block, Olivier Vernon. And it's like, okay, he was a giant. He was a guy who
Yeah,
he faced twice a year. And oh man, DeMarco Lawrence. I mean, Demarcus Lawrence.
Yeah.
So he's talking about a lot of guys that he faces multiple times. So he did mention, I want to say Max Crosby, but Nick Bosa kind of slipped through the cracks a little bit. He didn't mention Nick Bosa.
Interesting. Slight. We need to put that article in Nick Bosa's locker this year so he can
All right.
use
What do you
that.
think Nick Bosa would say? That's his opinion.
Yeah, I'm just gonna have to go sack Jalen Hurts, I guess, in week 13.
Sounds like a plan to me.
All right, more. What about the rest of the defensive line aside from Nick Bosa? Who's going to get after the quarterback? Who's going to be the Batman or the Robin to the Robins to Nick Bosa's Batman? Next. Today's episode of Locked On 49ers is brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Take your first swing at betting Major League Baseball on FanDuel and get 10 times your first bet amount in bonus bets up to $200. That's right. Just bet $20 and you'll land $200 in bonus bets, win or lose at FanDuel. That's $200 that you can spend on, betting everything from money line to the over-unders to who you think is going to have the first home run, all on an app that is safe, secure, super easy to use. Plus, when you win, you can get paid instantly. And I do love the app and the website at FanDuel. So easy to build your own parlays and navigate the sports and the numbers that you want to bet on. It is so clear and concise and easy to use. I love it. And not only Major League Baseball, of course, you can bet on tons of NFL. You can bet on Nick Bosa sacks. You can bet on rookies of the year. You can bet on PGA Tour. You can bet on just about any sport out there, car racing, tennis, snooker, if that's your thing. We've talked a lot about that on Peacock and Williamson. Still don't know exactly how snooker differs from pool, but it's out there. Rugby, you name it, volleyball, tennis, you can find it at FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get up to $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, official partner of Major League Baseball. Okay, Croc. By the way, really quick, looking at those, the strength of schedule for the 49ers, the Philadelphia Eagles game, 49ers only have 38% chance, according to ESPN's projections here, of winning that football game on the road at the Philadelphia Eagles. It is the lowest number on here, 38%. The only others that are below 50% is Cincinnati Bengals week 8, Cleveland on the road, interesting, in week 6, and that Dallas game is a coin flip, 50%.
Sneaky game in Cleveland. I'm telling you, that's that game. And I don't know. We'll see. But man, they got a good running back. They got some guys that can do some wreck shop on defense with Myles Garrett and Deshaun Watson. What's it going to be after a full offseason? It doesn't have the same type of distractions off of that weird incident that he had to go through. That he put a lot of other people through as well. But on the football side of things, he's fully back.
Yeah, like
what is going to before everything went down? I mean, top 6 quarterback in the NFL. That's how he was viewed. So does he return to that? And if he does, that can be a little dangerous. I don't know about their pass. I mean, yeah, they got Amari Cooper. I feel like they drafted somebody. Can't think right now, but
they did trade for Elijah Moore from the New York Jets.
And there have been a lot of clips circling around social media with him catching the ball. I don't know if that's them hyping up the trade or maybe trying to stick it to the Jets. Like, you guys gave us this guy. He's very active in OTAs.
Clearly, things did not go well for Elijah Moore with the New York Jets, but the dude's electric. I mean, he is twitched up for days. So I'm excited to see what that looks like for him in Cleveland. So the next biggest sack total on the entire defense, Croc, after Nick Bosa's projected 13.1 sacks, is Javon Hargrave at 6.9. And Hargrave's an interesting player because he is built low to the ground. He's thickly built. When he was drafted out of a small school, I'm blanking on which school he came from. It was, I'm going to look it up right now because it's going to drive me crazy. South Carolina State is the school he came from. And I remember watching him Senior Bowl, and he was awesome. And he was one of my draft crushes that year. And I thought he'd be a great fit at nose tackle for the 49ers in 2016. And that was obviously the pre John Lynch, Kyle Shanahan era, kind of running a different scheme there. And that's the role he played for the Pittsburgh Steelers early on. And really his entire career with the Steelers, he was more of a nose tackle. But in year 3, he kind of broke out. He had a couple sacks in his rookie season, a couple sacks in second season. Then he had 6.5 sacks in year 3 for Pittsburgh. And then after his 4th year, 4 sacks, he was a free agent and signed in Philadelphia. He had 4.5 sacks his first year, 7.5 sacks the next year, and kept climbing up to 11 sacks last year. So really his only huge sack production year and double-digit sacks was last year before becoming a free agent and signing with the 49ers. Before that, he had only been over 4.5 sacks twice in his career, 6.5 in 2018 and 7.5 in 2021. But clearly usage is one of the reasons why he had more sacks in Philly, because they allowed him to do more and didn't ask him to just nose tackle and two gap all day long. And so he'll have a similar role with the San Francisco 49ers. But I don't think people should expect that he's going to be a huge double-digit sack guy right out of the gate for the 49ers, although I think he's probably the most likely to have the next most sacks after Nick Bosa, just because he's explosive and he's just a really good player all around, run and pass.
But are you paying him to be a high sack guy?
Yes, you're paying him to be disruptive, for sure. You're paying him to do everything. You're paying him to be DJ Jones plus DeForest Buckner. It's kind of what you're paying. You're paying Javon Hargrave to be.
Okay, because again,
and that's a lot to ask, even for a really good player like Javon Hargrave.
It's almost like asking Eric Armstead to be a double-digit sack guy. Like, let's say if after his big year he'd hit the market, then which he could have, but then all of a sudden it's like, hey, you actually have 0 sacks. And we know what his value is to the 49ers, especially as a run defender. But with somebody that signed him in free agency and pay him $80+ million, expect him to be that double-digit sack guy, is that what the situation is with the 49ers, where you did get a double-digit sack guy, but that's not truly who he is, and he's more likely to have 6 sacks than the double digits?
I mean, that's a good question. And I want to hear from the listeners. Let us know in the comments on YouTube, at BD Peacock, at Eric_Crocker on Twitter. Would you be disappointed if Javon Hargrave plays a few seasons with the Niners and he's a 6 sack a year guy?
No, because I think for me, it's more so about the field, the impact, like you said, being disruptive. So, I think I value Eric Armstead more than a lot of people, even though you would like him to be more disruptive in the passing game. That was never what his game was predicated on. It was always good run defender, disruptive in the passing game in the sense of moving quarterbacks off of their spot. So if Hargraves is just getting the assist, right, and essentially throwing the alley-oop to an Eric Armstead. So maybe let's say Hargrave gets 6 sacks, but all of a sudden we see Armstead have 6 sacks and Drake Jackson has 6 sacks. I would assume that production was from the assist of Javon Hargraves. So yes, that, in my opinion, would be a success.
Yeah, disruption equals production too. And that's been kind of Eric Armstead's entire career. He had the one big sack year before he signed that free agent deal in 2019. But he's always been a guy that's gotten a lot of pressures, but just kind of is a step late from getting the sack. But he's been a productive player and really good against the run. And he's projected to get 4 sacks this year, which would be more than he had last year.
4 times as much.
Exactly. And then Drake Jackson, here's one. 6 sacks projected for Drake Jackson, doubling his total from his rookie season. I mean, we talked about it before on this show a lot, Croc. He's one of the big keys to the 49ers on defense. If he has that breakout season, this could be one of the best defensive lines in the NFL.
Yeah, big time. You're banking on him taking that next step. You got to find somebody that's going to give you legit production outside of Nick Bosa. Now, again, and I think I talked about it, I want to say on yesterday's episode, these are some of the things that you kind of deal with when you give up what you gave up to get Trey Lance. And when ideally you would like to have, those 3 draft picks, or even let's say you spent 1 first on the quarterback, whatever. But the next 2 years although late, maybe you're able to move up to get an edge rusher. There was a year where Jermaine Johnson fell late. Could he be somebody that would really help and rush opposite Nick Bosa, right? But you just miss out on all those opportunities, and you have to now count on a Drake Jackson who is closer to being a third round pick than being, a first round pick. You really are banking on essentially a late day 2 or mid day 2 guy to bring you any type of legit production. So that's, I think, kind of tough, but you need him to be that. Absolutely. It helps you a lot if he does, especially heading into the next offseason, because ideally it's like, well, if he's not that guy, then all right, maybe you draft an edge rusher in the first round, or you look to prioritize it. You go best player available, but you look to prioritize pass rusher, edge rusher, because Drake Jackson ultimately didn't reach what you felt like he could be.
100%. Yeah. And even as good as the 49ers have drafted in the later rounds, that's absolutely helped them not miss those early picks that they've traded away so much. But yeah, that's something that you start to see the trickle effect of not having that high end talent in the draft that you're able to bring in and develop. And you see that years later, not necessarily the year of those drafts where you don't have those picks. So they've got to continue to hit on those guys. And speaking of that, how are these roles in the back seven going to affect some statistics here? We'll look at some other projections on this 49ers defense next. Thanks again, everybody, for making Locked On 49ers your first listen every day here on the Locked On Podcast Network. We appreciate you. All the everydayers, we love you. Become an everydayer. Just subscribe up on YouTube. Hit that notification bell so you know when we go live. We'll be hitting a live one, I think, tomorrow, as we usually try to do on Thursday evenings to end the week. And you can find us on all of your podcast apps. Okay. We had a question, actually. I'm going to tie this in. We had a Twitter question, Croc, and I don't remember who it was from. Let's see if I can find it real quick. It was from Anthony, and he said, are the Niners the only team whose linebackers are faster than their safeties? And I was like, you know what? That's a great point. They might be the only team in NFL history that has faster linebackers than their safeties. They got a couple of safeties. They got 3 safeties, really, the guys that are projected to have the biggest roles on defense, including rookie Ji'ayir Brown, 3 safeties that probably can't break 4.6. But their linebackers are super rangy, and they ask their linebackers to do more than other teams ask their linebackers, especially in coverage and how much range. I mean, when you see like I flash back to when I think it was his rookie year, and Reuben Foster. Remember that one play where he picked up a crosser behind him and he just made a beeline. It's like, wow, that's special stuff. And then we see that a lot now with Fred Warner, and he'll pick up a wide receiver, not just a tight end or a running back or something in coverage. He'll pick up a wide receiver, right? And he's not just that hook defender. He's catching somebody who's coming behind him, running a dig route, running a crosser, and runs with them. And it's pretty special stuff what they're able to do. So the 49ers are built a little strange on defense, and they put a lot on their linebackers.
They definitely do. And they ask them to do a lot, especially with covering receivers. And I remember there was a play. Gosh, was it Smith? What was his first name? They signed him like first day of free agency.
Malcolm Smith.
He had to try to run with a receiver, a number 3 receiver, all the way down the field. And I was like, please don't do that again. But that's what's asked of it. And then you find the guys that can do it, which guys like Reuben Foster was able to. And obviously Fred Warner and what he's able to do. And then all of a sudden your defense is just that much more dangerous. And we saw Fred Warner carry Hollywood Brown on a dig route, flip his hips, dive, knock the ball away. They ask a lot of him, and he definitely delivers as the best linebacker in the NFL. Is he faster than the safeties? I don't know about that. He's probably the same speed, but even then, that in itself is somewhat, I don't want to say a problem, but it just depends on how you're going to utilize your safeties. You don't have Jaquiski Tartt back there anymore. You don't have Jimmy Ward. So you just don't ask these guys to do those same things. Maybe you just lean a little bit more on too high. And if you do that, it doesn't really matter if they're, 4-4, 4-5 guys.
They've got projections here for linebackers, which is, tackles, and this is solo plus assisted tackles. 137 for Fred Warner, 139 for Dre Greenlaw. A sack, 1.3 sacks for Fred Warner, and 1.4 interceptions with an interception for Greenlaw. So really similar statistical projections here for both Fred Warner and Dre Greenlaw. And it's a little bit harder to project those numbers because you never know when the ball's going to bounce into your hands, when a tip ball is going to land, when a quarterback is going to go blind and throw a football to a linebacker. So those are a little bit more difficult, but I think we can take a lot more away from the projections with the secondary, Croc. And a lot of it is snaps. And they kind of project a timeshare in the nickel is what I'm seeing here. 977 snaps for Charvarius Ward, 923. So they're giving the full lion's share of snaps to the two starting cornerbacks, Ward and Lenoir. But then 543 snaps to Isaiah Oliver, 434 snaps for Samuel Womack. So I think this is the projections, just not knowing who's going to be the full-time player there. But I think roles are going to be so important for this team, whether it's, who gets sacks behind Hargrave and Bosa, and who gets, an opportunity to play in the secondary is going to be a really big factor here for the 49ers and how good those depth pieces are for the Niners this year, if they're forced into action, if some starters get hurt.
I selfishly, and really where I think he'll fit in best, but I'm pretty sure 49ers know more than me, but Samuel Womack, I want to see him really compete for that outside spot. I think that's where he's going to be best suited. Just use your athleticism, use your length, use your quick feet, your change of direction, your ability to turn around with guys and be an outside guy. They put him in the slot last year. I believe he can play there. Obviously, he had an issue with, Lil Birdie said run fits. That was kind of the issue why we saw him get benched. And they ended up putting Diarmado Lenoir there. We watched him play well there before he had to play on the outside. Then he played well on the outside. But Samuel Womack, I just want to see him compete because I feel like with his length, the reason why he probably fell so far is because, I'm only 5'9". It's like, all right, if you're 5'9", but you have that type of length and that type of ability, who cares if you're not 5'11", 6 foot tall? And I think if you're in the right defense, which 49ers run a lot of quarters off coverage, I think he fits that defense well. You don't need those 6'3" long, 6'2" long guys as you would in like that Seattle 3 or like a single high defense. So let me see him on the outside. What does that look like? So those snaps, it doesn't look like they are anticipating anything crazy with the outside guys. But I will say this. Highest snap count guy, Fred Warner, 1,032. That's projected. Same for Hufanga, 1,032. That's more than Ward and Lenoir. So maybe they're assuming somebody gets hurt. Yeah, and if there is one guy that gets hurt, the guy out of the corners that we've seen kind of being banged up a little bit, Charvarius Ward.
Yeah, and I think that's part of it, using sort of his injury history against him there, and he's not playing the full snaps. And Fred Warner and Talanoa Hufanga are the only defenders they have pretty much out there every snap, and they haven't had any I can't think of any Hufanga injuries that kept him out games. Fred Warner too, right? He's had some banged ups, but leave the game and then remember there was one injury where it's like, oh no, Fred Warner looks like he might be
Dallas Cowboys.
Yeah, and then he was out for a play and trotted back on the field, I think.
Cowboys in the playoff game in Dallas.
Yes, that was it.
It's even worse when you're at the game. I was actually at that game, and there's no TV or announcer to tell me what's going on. It just gets quiet, and I see Fred Warner. I'm like, oh my gosh! Yeah. And I'm scrolling through Twitter trying to figure out what's going on with them.
I feel like the interception projections are low for Hufanga and Gibson. Those guys got their hands on so many footballs last year. 2.8 interceptions for Hufanga, 2.2 for Gibson. I'm taking the over on both of those.
Both of those guys. If I had to guess, I'd say they both get 3. They just figure it out. They're always around the ball. They have a knack for it. There's going to be a couple of batted balls. They fly around. They put themselves in position to make plays on the ball. I'm definitely going at least 3 for both of those guys. And that's been their career. Again, we're talking about Tyshawn Gibson. He's someone who has 32 career interceptions. You also have Ji'ayir Brown. Where's the interception total? 0.1. So they don't have him getting one. I'm taking the over on that too if I can.
They only have Ji'ayir Brown projected to take 33 snaps. So they're thinking it's going to be, play a lot of special teams. You're a backup as a rookie. And so that's why I think Ji'ayir Brown's projections are low here. They're just not projecting him to be on the field. I would think he would be on the field a little more, and maybe even some 3 safety looks and have an opportunity to play a Jimmy Wardish kind of a role. I would be surprised how much they like Ji'ayir Brown, and his thing is not, he's not a raw prospect. He should be a guy theoretically who can come in and play a lot, and he'll have a uniform on game day and he'll be on special teams. So I think Ji'ayir Brown has an opportunity to play a lot more than they're projecting here. But it's a good point, and it's how Ji'ayir Brown can maybe get on the field even in some nickel work is. You brought it up with Samuel Womack there, and it's something for people to remember when you're playing that nickel role. And Jimmy Ward was so good at it, and I think that's why they brought in a bigger corner and Isaiah Oliver to be that bigger slot corner. Is run fits are really important at that position. And Shark, he was really good at it too. So, Samuel Womack, if he's going to want to compete for that nickel job, he's going to have to be really good in that regard and get better there with his run fits, because that's something that's really important, and something that Ji'ayir Brown is really good at, being close to the line of scrimmage. And they might want to get a couple of Hufangas on the field too with Ji'ayir Brown and Talanoa Hufanga. And
if you are going to be the third safety, somebody's likely to maybe get banged up for a little bit, have to come out, or whatever the case is. Maybe even if it's just for a game. And in that game, that'll be Ji'ayir's opportunity to get that one pick.
And I don't think it should be completely dismissed that Ji'ayir Brown could just win the job, because Tashawn Gibson's on a 1-year deal. He was on a 1-year deal. He was signed off the street in August last year. It was kind of an afterthought when he joined the team, and he's a veteran and he was a good player, and he was much better than I even expected him to be for the 49ers last year. But they went up and drafted this guy and moved up in the third round to get Ji'ayir Brown. He's the first draft pick they made this year. And if they think he's ready to go, I don't see any reason why they wouldn't just throw him out there.
And we've seen them try to phase certain guys out. We saw it with Hufanga and Jaworski Tart, where all of a sudden Tart's reps started to get cut into.
So those are some of the projections from ESPN's Mike Clay. Let us know what you think at BD Peacock, at Eric_Crocker on Twitter. We'll come back and do the offense as well. Some very interesting projections for 49ers in 2023. Thanks everybody for making us your first listen. Croc and I back tomorrow live right here. Locked On 49ers.
Subscribe to this video.